Welcome to the Detroit Sports Room, your home for Detroit sports news and information. Now, here's Jim.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Detroit Sports Room. And today in the room I have with me Jimmy Liao, and he is from Motown Sports Talk Podcast. And really appreciate you being on today, and we're going to get into your background. But the first question I have for you is what inspired you to become a Detroit Lions fan?
Well, thanks for having me, Jim. Well, I was a Lions fan because I grew up in Michigan, Bad Axe, Michigan, to be exact.
Nice.
So I followed all the Michigan sports, and I rooted for the local team. Unlike a lot of other people who grew up in Michigan around me, a lot of them ended up rooting for other teams because the Lions weren't that great. But I always liked the local teams, so here I am.
No, that's awesome, man. I mean, for me, I've been a fan ever since my dad sat me in front of the TV, and it's been like 43 years or something like that.
Nice.
You know, I can't remember exactly, but pretty close. And so it's always interesting to see how your fandom started, because some people it was Barry Sanders, some people it's Calvin Johnson, some people it's, I just can't take my eyes off it, like a car wreck or something like that.
Well, I'm 46 years old, so we're in that same demographic. We started before the Barry Sanders days, so we are
Billy
hardcore,
Sims,
loyal fans.
Monty Clark,
Yeah, I still remember Eric Hipple, Gary Danielson, Rusty Hilger.
Yes.
Yeah.
Scott Mitchell, the $1 Million Water Boy.
Scott Mitchell. Yeah, he had a couple of really good years there.
Andre Ware had no good years.
Oh, yeah. Chuck Long, remember him?
Yeah. Chuck Long.
Rodney Peete was my favorite player for a few years there.
Yeah. Yeah, he did pretty good until he went to Dallas and then told us that he went from the outhouse to the penthouse. I remember that comment way back then. It just, man, such a embattled franchise, I guess you want to say. So give me a little bit about your background and what you do.
I'm a family medicine physician, although I've done mostly urgent care in my career. Nowadays, I'm doing telemedicine. So I went to college in Philadelphia, University of Pennsylvania. I got a psych degree, which apparently is a common theme among some of your recent guests.
It really is. You're the third one. Jeremy Reisman and John Macaroon both did the same thing, and now you're in the same path. I don't know. It
helps us cope. It helps us cope with the pain.
Helps cope.
Yeah.
Okay.
So after that, I went to University of Michigan Medical School. And now I'm out here on the West Coast, Washington State, just close to Portland area.
Do you know where Bremerton is?
I've heard it. I don't know exactly where it is, though.
That's where I was born.
Oh, really?
Yeah, right
Nice.
across the inlet from Seattle. So, yeah.
Wow. How'd you end up in Michigan?
In Michigan, my dad was a Marine. So,
Okay.
yeah, I was born at the naval base out there. And
Nice.
then they went back home to Michigan after he left the Marine Corps. So, yeah,
Cool.
That's how I got back here and how I was there. I was, my mom and dad are both originally from Michigan, but because of the military, he had to be out there. So that's where I was born. I was
Nice.
born, and then we fled, pretty much.
Yeah. Well, I thank him for his service.
Yeah, I would appreciate that. So, okay, being a doctor, that is really, really cool. I mean, I got to ask this question. What are your insights into how the NFL is handling the current coronavirus situation?
Yeah, well, this is multifactorial. There are so many things going on. Overall, I think they're doing a good job. COVID is such an unknown, even for the doctors in the medical community, that it's difficult to come up with real good protocols and protocols that you're confident about. So I think the NFL is doing the best they can. Players need to accept that they're not going to be perfectly safe and the protocols aren't going to be perfect.
One thing that concerns me, and I don't know if you'll know about this or have an opinion on it, but the testing itself has proven to be not very reliable in some cases. There's some cases where they say it was negative and test again negative, and then all of a sudden it was positive.
Right.
And then we have false positives and all that. Can you speak to that any at all? I don't know your background as well, so I just wanted to ask and see what you thought.
Yeah, with any kind of test, there's a false positive and false negative rate. The main concern is the false negative rate, which could be potentially 30% or maybe even more.
Wow.
We don't know because there's no gold standard test.
Right.
And that's something a lot of people don't realize. We don't know for sure if somebody's positive or negative. So we do these tests without really knowing what to compare it against and what is the gold standard of testing.
Yeah.
The other thing that can cause false negatives is this little secret that the NFL is not going to tell you about is the test requires compliance of both the administrator of the test as well as the player, because it's a swab test, nasal swab or oropharyngeal swab. And if you don't do that test very well, you can increase your false negative rate. The most common swab test people are familiar with might be the Strep Test. A lot of kids get that done. If you've ever seen that done, you'll see a wide variance of how good of a sample you get from the swab. Some kids are totally compliant. They'll let the assistant just swab the heck out of the tonsils. Other kids are jerking their heads around and you barely get any sample. So it'll be interesting because players could be non-compliant with actually getting that swab inserted deep into the nose, which would significantly increase the false negative rate. So that's something that keep in mind going forward. If a player really wants to play in the next game, say it's a playoff game or the Super Bowl, let's say Stafford really wants to play, which he does.
Yeah.
You might find that he's not going to be that compliant with the test. He's going to jerk his head around, so you can't get a very accurate sample. Just a little behind the scenes of the testing procedure. And so if that
happens, is it more likely that it's going to turn negative with the lower sample size, or you know what I'm saying?
It's more likely to be negative. It's more likely to be a false negative. You can almost guarantee a negative test.
No, I'm kidding.
Sorry, what was that?
You can almost guarantee a negative test?
If you barely put that swab into the nose.
Wow.
So it requires
that is amazing.
Yeah, so the administrator of the test is supposed to stick that swab deep into the sinus cavity, which is very uncomfortable. Nobody really likes it. And the patient is supposed to keep their head still and let the person do that.
Wow.
And even with a perfectly good administration of the test, again, there potentially could be a false negative rate up to 30% or even higher.
Is this the best way to test? I mean, couldn't you do blood tests or some kind of different test? Why does it have to be way up your nose? I don't understand that.
Yeah, I don't know for sure. The virus is in the nasal and oropharyngeal area. The virus is also shed in multiple other body fluids, including stool. So you could do those kind of tests as well. I haven't heard of any blood tests for the antigen. They do blood tests for the antibodies for COVID, but I haven't heard of an antigen test for COVID.
Okay, this is so interesting, man. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing that much with us. That is something else. To know that it's the tester and the testee that have to both cooperate to get the right sample so that you can guarantee that they're tested properly so we don't get these false negatives.
Right.
And yeah, that could be a big, big issue when going forward with the NFL season, when a player wants to play, knowing that information, we might get people that are, could lead to some really bad stuff if other people start getting it from that one player that wanted to play instead of doing the test correctly.
Right.
So the NFL really needs to make sure that both participants in the test, the testor and the testee, are doing it right. So maybe they should have representation there to watch it or something.
Yeah, it'll be interesting how they do the whole administration of the test as well as monitoring the players. Are they going to have independent doctors? overseeing the tests or examining the players and interviewing the players, sort of like how the NFL has independent neurologists for the concussion issue? Right. Or are these doctors going to be with the teams, which potentially could cause a conflict of interest?
You're right, because say it's Matthew Stafford. We're 0-8 without Matthew Stafford last year. And right. Say it's Stafford and it's the team doctor that's given the test. So let's just say the Lions could be persuaded to say, you don't have to go so deep in the nose this time.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? So, and then it produces a negative test and gets him on the field when he probably has symptoms, or maybe even to that stage, because it takes a while to show symptoms.
It can. And the whole symptom thing is a very intriguing thing too. What if a player has symptoms but is testing negative? Does the doctor have the right or the ability to pull that player off the field? Does the doctor have the ability to say, Stafford, you're not playing during this playoff game? That's a real tough one. This is why the doctor almost has to be an independent doctor that is not a team representative or a representative of the NFL.
You should go down there and do that. Just don't wear the Stafford jersey. I'm just telling you that.
Yeah, this might give it away. Conflict of interest here.
Maybe.
Yeah, just a little bit.
So how optimistic are you that we're going to have a season in 2020 for the NFL?
I would say at this point I'm pretty optimistic. Seems like the NFL and the NFLPA have agreed to a lot of these protocols. They're actually meeting as we speak right now and hammering out some of the final details. Oh, wow. Sounds like things are progressing well between the players union and the NFL teams. So I'm pretty confident at this point, unless there's some kind of major change regarding COVID over the next few months.
It's been bothering me because they canceled the preseason, they canceled the Hall of Fame game, but my real concern was when they canceled the Hall of Fame ceremony and postponed it till next year. Because for me, that's showing me that they don't think this is going away anytime soon, and they're concerned about the safety factor until next year. So every game that we could have played so far has been canceled.
Yeah. So they're canceling the things that are not revenue producing. So
that makes sense.
I think money is a factor in all this, and that's something we can't forget.
No, it really is. And I appreciate that too, because, it is an added incentive. Is that okay? So if a player doesn't play because they test positive, do they still get game checks? Do you know that? Or
yeah, they're going to get game checks. So if they test positive during the season, as long as they're out, they're getting paid. They're going to get put on this IR commissioner's exempt list. They'll get paid.
Okay. So how long do they have to be? They have to be out for 2 weeks, or how does that work?
No, the last report I saw was if they are having symptoms, they're going to be out at least 10 days. If they're asymptomatic.
Oh, that's it. Okay.
Yeah. Here's the other. If they're asymptomatic, if I'm reading correctly, they could be out as few as 5 days. As long as they're asymptomatic and they get 2 negative tests within 24 hours, they could return as little as 5 days, which is actually adheres to the CDC return to work criteria. So it's nothing really out of bounds here.
Oh, that's great news. You are like a fountain of information today. I really appreciate this. And you have the best first name too, because I have the same. So
absolutely.
I had to point that out before the end of the show. I had to do it. But so in this culture of COVID, I saw that the NFL is proposing that they're going to have some fans, but they have to wear masks. How feasible is that to have fans at the games, and and what kind of percentage would you think that there will be in stadiums this year?
Well, most teams are saying there's going to be about 10 to 20% capacity in the stadium. Okay. Some teams like the New York area have said 0% until the governing bodies allow any fans.
I think that's the same in Michigan, but I'm not sure about that.
Really? Okay.
I'm not totally sure about that with the masks and everything, but I don't think Governor Whitmer has said that we could have fans yet, as
Really?
far as I know.
Okay. So it's going to look a lot different, and crowd noise is going to be a lot different. Teams might not have to practice their silent count this year.
Yeah. It might not. That's a good point. I'm going to ask you an off-the-wall question. And
Sure.
We generally do Lions stuff, but I know you're in Washington State, and you have a new hockey team, the Kraken.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's so cool, man. I mean, you lost the Supersonics quite a few years ago, and now you're going to have hockey there. What do you think about that?
Well, first of all, I'm not a Washington sports fan. I'm still a Michigan sports fan. So
That is
I
super
peripherally follow the local teams, but nothing seriously. But the Kraken seems like a
Okay.
really good name. I
It
love their
really is.
logo.
Right by the sea.
Yeah, it's a really cool
It's
name.
cool. Yeah, I liked it a lot when I saw it. I thought I would ask. Okay, so let's talk some Lions football. That's what we're here for. Besides the COVID stuff that we're talking about, what is your biggest concern about the Lions going forward this season as a football team?
Pass rush. It's got to be the pass rush. We need.
That? And I have offensive line as my biggest question mark.
Okay.
Just because we have two rookies, we have a guy we just signed from Philly that he's not a great pass blocker, and neither are the two people that we just drafted. Jonah Jackson's better than Stenberg, but if you say we have, let's say, Decker, Dahl, God forbid Wiggins, Ragnow in the middle, and Vaitai, we have a lot of, yeah, you know what I'm saying? It's not looking great. But if Jackson can start, Stenberg, I don't think is going to be ready. I just don't. He needs some work with the training staff, in my opinion, because his bend isn't real good. So and he doesn't get low enough, for NFL blocking. So that bothers me too. What do you think about the offensive line? We'll go into defensive line next.
Yeah, I'm optimistic. I think Vaitai potentially will be an upgrade over Wagner. And the way I can tell is just look at the contracts they both signed in the offseason. Yeah. Wagner got a pretty low deal to go to the Packers, which suggests that no team really valued him that high. Vaitai is getting paid about twice as much as Wagner in this upcoming year. So hopefully...
I could replace Wagner with a wrestling figure, and I think we'd be better off.
Yeah, we might be. Yeah.
But you really... what do you think about Vaitai? Do you think he's going to be good here? I mean, he's younger. I mean, he's played both sides. He's actually played left tackle and right tackle. So,
yeah, when he got a chance to play in Philly, he was fine. So, I really don't know. I'll just see how it goes this coming year.
And what do you think of the rookies?
I'm expecting Jonah Jackson to start. I don't scout colleges or anything like that, so I'm not going to pretend know anything about their college successes, but I would expect Jonah Jackson to start this year.
Yeah, me too, totally. And then I think they're going to have a Dahl-Wiggins combo on the other side until Logan Stenberg is ready. And I think the reason they do that is one's really good at pass block, one's really good at run block. You'd really like them to be one player, but since they're two players with those abilities, I think that's why they keep swapping them out like they do. But, who knows? Maybe they're just dumb. And
yeah, who knows? It would be great to actually talk to the coaches and get their honest opinions about what's going on.
I'm working on that. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, let me know when you get that done.
Yeah, sure. We'll see how it goes. The next thing is we were talking about defensive line. So you're in pass rush specifically, which could include the linebacker, safety. This defense usually gets its pass rush from other places than just the ends. So are you concerned with the depth? What's the concern on the defensive line?
Two issues here. One is we don't have really great elite one-on-one pass rushers. Trey Flowers is probably our best, but he's never hit double-digit sacks in his career. Only 28 sacks total in his whole career, I believe. So that's the main one concern. The other concern is creativity in scheming a pass rush.
Yes.
We didn't see much creativity in the first half of last year. The second half got a little bit better. We saw some secondary blitzes. So we're not going to be able to change the personnel at this point. So I'm hoping that the schemes and the creativity improves this coming year.
I still think we can sign one more guy. I mean, Everson Griffin's still out there. Clowney's still out there. They're still out there because they wanted more money than they're going to get. But as they wait this whole thing out, and they wait the COVID thing out, I think we're going to see one more player signed. I would believe in that pass rush situation.
Yeah, who do you want? Who's the guy you would want to get?
That's interesting because I think Everson Griffin's a great player, but I think he plays the same position as Trey Flowers because we only rush 3. So, I mean, if he can be that other end, I'd be great with that. But we got Deshaun Hand coming back. So I would really like to see what he could do. Clowney is better in the dirt than he is standing up. So I don't see him as a jack linebacker type. Marcus Golden would be somebody that I might think about from the Giants because he is kind of that jack linebacker. He had 10 sacks last year, so that's a guy I would look at. I don't know, though. I mean, if you can fit Everson Griffin in there on third down situations and you know, maybe go with 4 guys, you know, across and on a third down situation, being Deshaun Hand, Danny Shelton, you know, Trey Flowers, and then Everson Griffin. I mean, that's nice.
Yeah, the main concern for me with Griffin would be, first of all, his age, 32 years old, and also his mental health history.
I agree.
There are some major concerns there, just some scary incidents in the past, such as jumping out of an ambulance, showing up shirtless and unprompted to teammate Trey Waynes' house, public intoxication with battery of a cop, spending 3 months in a sober house last year. So the Lions would have to be very, very comfortable with his mental health history to take a chance on him.
That is a difficult thing to take a chance on when you have a fragile locker room. If you had like the Patriot locker room with Belichick running it, yeah, I think so.
Right.
But with this locker room, I mean, we've had Darius Slay that's gone, and you know, a lot of players left. Quandre Diggs got traded. Yeah, I mean, you know, I think that there's a lot of upheaval. I think that's settled down now. At least I think he's gotten rid of everybody that's been, you know, that didn't buy in. So, yeah, I think we're going to be better, and to bring a wild card in may not be the best thing.
Yeah, that doesn't seem to fit.
Who would you bring in if you could bring in anybody? And I'll even include, you know, the name escapes me. The guy from Green Bay last year, Mike Daniels.
Oh, Mike Daniels, right.
Yeah, even if bring him. I mean, whomever. Do you think we need that extra guy? I do. I mean, I believe we do. Julian Okwara is going to be fine. Romeo Okwara is in the mix. You get Deshaun Hand back, so that's good. And we keep forgetting about that kid from Clemson that we got, Austin Bryant, as well, in the jack position. So we have a lot of players that could fit that. And that guy from Ohio State, Jashawn, I can't remember his last name. Yes. You know what? He's rated a lot higher than people give him credit for as a pass rushing, like a DN, D-tackle type thing. So I think that it's possible that he could play a role in that type of thing too. That's going to be so difficult this year. So, I mean, but anybody else that you think might fit?
Well, I think you're right mentioning all those players, because I think we need one of those guys to outplay their status and really just show up this year and outperform. Because there are a few guys out there, like you mentioned, Clowney. There's Yannick Ngakoue, who wants to be traded. But these guys all have concerns, which is why they're out there, and they might be asking for too much money, which might not be worth it.
What's the concern on Ngakoue? I'd heard some things about him as well. Have you heard those same?
His concerns are his social media presence, as well as
kind of a mental issue as well.
Yeah, it's sort of like
in a way.
He's publicly demanding trades, which is what we just had to deal with Darius Slay. I can't see this team wanting to go down that route again. Plus, we'd have to trade at least a first-round pick for him, which is too high in my opinion. I think the price
is too high for the stuff that we're going to get. He's a great player.
Yeah.
I mean, don't get me wrong. He's a great player, but I don't know if he fits here. So that's very good assessment on your part on that. I have to ask you this question about no preseason. We have, I don't know, I guess we're working up a training camp now until we go to the regular season. How does this affect injuries? Because we have been a very injured team. We only had 15 players that played all season last year, 17 the previous year. And now we don't have anything. Darius Slay and Snacks both held out and both got injured.
Yeah.
Do you think the rate of injury will be higher for the Lions, if that's even possible? Or how do you think that affects us?
I don't think there's any way to predict if the injury rate is going to be higher. The NFL is allowing a much longer strength and conditioning acclimation period than in the past. Okay. Right now, this just went down about 30 minutes ago. I saw a tweet from Albert Breer that they're going to potentially agree to a 15-day strength and conditioning acclimation period, which the typical period is about 5 days. Then they're going to start practice day 16, and they're not even going to have padded practices until day 21. So I don't think this is going to be much different than previous seasons as far as injury rate early on in training camp.
Wow. That's amazing, because most people do believe that it's going to be higher just because of the fact that we're not really – they're worried about game shape, physical game shape, and it's hard to simulate that type of a thing when you're not in the pads, you're not playing another team,
right,
you know, to assess where you're at. And so maybe you're right. That would be great if you're correct. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, and it may be higher, but even if it is higher, is that just a random fluky year, or is it actually because of the lack of OTAs? There's really no way to say for sure.
That's true. The one key injury we have to avoid this year, what is it? Besides Stafford, we know we're done if we know we're done if Stafford.
Right.
But a secondary player that if we get that player injured, it really hurts the team.
I would hate to lose Ragnow. I'd hate to lose DeAndre Swift, who I'm expecting to be our number one running back this year.
Yes.
So those two guys would really hurt. Losing Galladay, of course, would hurt, as our wide receiver depth, if we lose one of our top guys, is in severe question.
Oh, no, I like Quentin Cephas. I really do. We still have Amendola, and we still have Fulgham, and we still have, Marvin Jones. So it's like, if any place I think we could afford an injury, it would either be at running back or at wide receiver. That's my thing. Because if you get Frank Ragnow hurt, that's bad.
Yeah, that's
Bo
bad.
Benchwa and that other guy, center that we have, and that's it. I mean, we really don't have very good backups for that or the defensive line, really.
Right. Yeah, you might be right. With the running backs, we do have a pretty good stable there with Kerryon, Will Scarborough, who looked good last year, and Ty Johnson had some flashes last year as well.
Yeah. Kerryon and Swift, I think, are going to be 50-50 for a while, just until Kerryon gets hurt again. And then, no, I'm just kidding.
Cross our
it
fingers.
just seems like every year that guy gets hurt. This is a good question for a doctor, because I think this injury-prone label gets put on players. Is that a thing? Is that really something that if you get injured and you just keep getting injured over and over again, that's just something, a freak accident that keeps happening to you? It's bad luck, or is there such a thing as injury-prone?
I don't think anybody knows for sure. It's certainly possible that some players, their ligaments, their tendons are just more fragile. You see sometimes a guy will tear one ACL, then a year or two later tears the other ACL. So it's possible some guys are more injury prone, but there's just no way to do a good research study into this kind of thing to know for sure.
That's true. Thank you for that answer, man. That was, you've been really good today on this show. I really appreciate it. I have met you before, and I'm giving you all these difficult questions. And you're doing a great job, by the way. Just a really good job with all of it. So we're going to go back to a little bit of Lions again, and then I'm probably going to wrap up here in a little bit. You're doing just a great job in the room today, and I'm so happy to have you here. It's been a great interview so far. We're going to go back. I mean, the Lions have never won the NFC North. They haven't won a Super Bowl. But yet you're 46, I'm 50, and we still stick with this team. What is your hope level in the next 5 years that you feel that we could get even the division title?
In general, I'm an optimistic fan.
Good.
I have the same hope level as I had during the Matt Millen years, so that gives you a look into my credibility. So I'm just optimistic
I'm
in general. Yeah, it's okay. But we've also experienced the 1991 playoff win where we destroyed the Cowboys. So we've had some success in our lifetime. Yeah, that was fantastic. I still remember.
And we should have destroyed the Cowboys the other time too, but and this is another question I ask everybody. So there's this theory of Detroit versus everybody, and then there's some fans that think that we just don't play well enough to win. While it could be a mix of both, I do see the Lions getting screwed over and over and over and over again. Is there something to it, a little bit to it, or nothing to it at all, that the league has something against the Lions?
I don't think the league has something against the Lions. I feel what's happened is we've had some high-profile cases that have really gone against us, especially when it comes to weird rule quirks that just seem to affect us first.
Yeah.
And those have built up over time, and add on the fact that we haven't had a lot of success that has been able to overcome or overshadow these errors or quirks in the rules. It's really allowed it to stick in our minds pretty heavily. But I feel like on a game-to-game basis, I don't think there's anything, nobody's out to get us. But over time, there are a few calls that don't look great.
Shaking your head. Yeah. So you're not paranoid. That's good. No, I'm just kidding. So I got to have your thoughts on Matt Patricia, Bob Quinn, who somebody just rated the worst GM in the entire league.
Yeah, I saw that.
And Matt Patricia and that tandem and the Patriot Way and everything, do you think it's going to succeed? Do you think it's going to fail? And what are your thoughts on Matt Patricia as a head coach?
Well, I like Bob Quinn. I feel I'm happy with what he's done so far. It's really hard to judge from an outsider perspective. We're not in the room. We don't see exactly what's going on and how the decisions are being made. With Matt Patricia, the main concern with me is how adaptable he is on a game-to-game basis and during a game basis. He's shown to be a little bit slow in adapting his schemes. Mm-hmm. I'm hoping that changes this year. He's a brand new head coach. He's only going in his third year. I'm happy giving coaches multiple years to try to get things together and learn how to be a head coach.
Okay. No, that's fair. And you like Bob Quinn, you like the direction we're going. So do you think that they will be here next year, given everything that's happened this year and Sheila now owning the team? And I think she backed off the mandate just a little bit by saying she just wanted to have a successful season and what, I don't know what that looks like. But with everything that's going on, do you think that it's fair to him to say, okay, you need to make the playoffs this year or you're out type of thing with everything that's happened?
Right. I don't think that's totally fair. I think he's definitely coming back next year, unless there's a player mutiny or something crazy happens. Sheila Fordham was part of the ownership group when they hired Matt Patricia. She probably had a huge hand in the decision. She had a big hand in the decision to hire Bob Quinn. So she likes these guys. During her introductory press conference, she mentioned how she likes teams that have consistency, like the New England Patriots. With the whole COVID issue going on, it's going to give coaches a little bit more leeway this year. There's a 7th playoff team this year, which means it's much more likely we're going to be able to stay in the playoff hunt much longer.
Yes. And
throw in the fact that revenues for the NFL are going to go down this year, which could drastically affect income, the salary cap, all that. Is the team going to want to eat the rest of Matt Patricia and Bob Quinn's contract and spend another $5-10+ million on new coaches and GMs? The teams probably are going to be hesitant to be doing that kind of thing.
I have not heard
year.
that point. That is a very good point. It really is, because of all the loss of money so far and projected losses, because of the fans not being able to be in attendance, and the concessions will be down, and the merchandise sales at the building will be down. So yeah, I can see where they would think that. And there was something on the table though that was going to try to take away from the player salary under the salary cap. I remember them saying so. I don't think it's going to happen, but I don't think the Players Association would ever let that happen.
Yeah, they're not taking away the player salary. The only way the player salary is going away this year is if they don't even have a season. So if they play 1 week of the season, the player salaries, the contracts are in effect. I think what you may have been seeing is they're talking about how quickly they want to reduce the salary cap in future years. The NFL teams wanted to reduce them immediately within the next 1 or 2 years. The latest report was they were compromising and willing to reduce it over the next 4 to 5 years.
Yep. But what happens if this is a 1 year thing and next year they're back in business as usual?
Right. So they're still going to have some losses this year. So they'll be able to spread it out over the next 4 to 5 years. So we may not see the salary cap drop that much next year.
You think that's why Kenny Golladay hasn't gotten an extension yet?
I don't know. It's possible. You're right that it could be one of the considerations here.
Free agents yet, because we haven't signed anybody. We haven't really made hardly any moves in the last few weeks. Maybe it is because we don't know what's going to happen yet.
Yeah, that's a good point. I believe we still have about $20 million or $21 million under the salary cap right now. So maybe you're right. We're right. So we might be holding on to that money, seeing what the NFL and NFLPA are going to agree to, so we can have a better idea going forward what the salary cap is going to look like next year. Because if there's going to be a severe drop
money now, and they drop it even for this season, we're in trouble. I mean, we're not as in trouble as some teams would be.
Yeah, right. Well, they can't drop it for this season, but they could drop it drastically for next season, which means we could cut. We might have to cut a bunch of players if we give Golladay and Decker huge contracts and we're uptight against the cap. We might have to cut a bunch of mid-level or fringe players just to get under the cap for next year. So you make a good point that that's a consideration with Galladay's contract.
What do you think about Taylor Decker and that extension? Taylor Decker for me is average at best, but that's just me. I mean, some people like him, some people don't. What do you think about him?
Well, an average offensive tackle is still a pretty good thing to have. We've seen some really below average offensive tackles in the past few years, and it can get ugly. Cornelius Lucas, Adrian Waddle. So we've had some bad stuff on the offensive tackle standpoint. So I would like to see us sign Decker, even if he's just an average offensive tackle. But again, it all comes down to money, how much he's asking for.
Right. So we'll see on those things too. I wanted you to be able to have this time to be able to tell us where you can find your podcast and anything else that you want to tell the audience out there.
Well, I'm at Motown Sports Talk. The Twitter is Motown Sport Talk. So that's where you can find me.
All right. And anything else from the medical perspective on the NFL and COVID? I want to make sure we covered all of it.
Yeah. So one thing that came out just in the past couple of days was they announced that there have been 59 known positive cases within the players so far. Now, that doesn't account for players who have contracted COVID but didn't disclose it or just never got tested. Now, one thing we need to keep in mind as NFL fans is we want the season to go smoothly. We want it to go with minimal disruption. The way for that to happen is actually the more positive tests that are early on amongst the players, the more likely the season is going to go smoothly. So we're going to start seeing the results of this initial round of testing in the next couple weeks or so. The higher the number of players that have tested positive, the more likely the season is going to go smoothly, with the assumption that some immunity develops, which is very likely. If immunity develops, it decreases the likelihood of positive tests in the future.
do you think there is an immunity? I've heard that you get it. I mean, I've heard all kinds of stuff, to be honest, and it's confusing sometimes. But I've heard of people getting it and then getting it again and then getting it, you know. So does your immune system kind of build up to it over time, or is it a situation where you get the antibody when you get it once and you shouldn't get it twice? I mean, how does that all work?
No one knows for sure. My guess is that you do develop some level of immunity. There's not much question that you can contract it again, but if you have some immunity, your body's able to fight it off pretty quickly, hopefully before you test positive, and hopefully before you can expose other people and give it to other people. That'll hopefully decrease the chance of an outbreak.
Okay. All right. Anything else you want to add before we wrap this up?
I think that's about it.
All right. I really appreciate you being on with me today, Jimmy. You know, I'm very, very happy about all the great information you shared with our audience today. If you haven't checked them out yet, check them out. They are going to be, the links will be in the description below. As always, hit the subscribe button and the little bell icon so you know when the new videos are coming out. And like the video, because that helps us too. And if you've done all those things, take a 5-minute break because you're probably exhausted. All right, everybody. Have a good day. We're out.
Thanks.